Hi everyone. In this video I'm going to assemble this tabletop tool caddy. It's a design space project, but many have asked if I can do an assembly video. So keep watching. So before we get started sewing, I wanted to lay out the fabrics that we're going to need. You're going to need two pieces that are 23.5 by 18.5. This will be your front and your back of your project. On the front pieces, I've attached fusible interfacing to give it more body. This is recommended in the design space pattern. You will have also, and those will need to be cut by hand because of the size. You will also cut on your maker two pieces. One is, I believe, let's see the size of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost 7 inches wide, 23.5 inches long. And the second piece, 5.5 by 23.5 inches long, and these are the pockets. Your machine will have drawn out your sew lines on those two pieces. I've prepared this red band, which is optional to put across the front as a decorative piece. You can use braiding or ribbon or pom-poms, anything like that, or you can put nothing at all. It's completely optional. This piece is not functional. Its only use is to be decorative. I've prepared my binding. So I've done my binding just in half. In the design space project, they mention using double fold bias tape, but I have tons of these strips already cut, so I'm just going to use this. This piece I've assembled together. I use Jenny Doan from Missouri Star Quilt. I use her instructions to make my binding. I'll add the link for her video under this video. And I've prepared this piece 96 inches long. To go all the way around the perimeter, I believe you need 84 inches. But I've cut 3 strips and attach them together to make this binding, and then just pressed in half. And I have 2 pieces that are 23.5 inches long. I've cut them 2 inches wide and pressed them in half, and they will be the binding for the tops of my pockets. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is the binding on the top of the pockets. So I'm just going to set these pieces aside. We don't need them right away. Okay, so we have 2 layers here. Grab my clips. I'm going to line this up right along the top, nice and neat. Make sure it's straight all the way along. Okay, so on both pieces I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam right along. Then I'm going to roll this over to the back after it's sewn on, and I'm going to stitch in the ditch to attach it on the back side. So there we go. We'll get this one all set. I'll be doing the exact same thing with this project, with this panel, and I'll be back to show you how they look. So I've got my bias tape sewn on, or my binding sewn on. So now I'm just going to turn it over to the back and clip it. and I'm going to sew it again right along the edge to hold it in place through the back. We want to keep it nice and even so it looks good. And I'm going to continue all the way along on both panels, doing the same thing all the way. So we have our nice little trim all the way along. Okay, so I'm going to repeat the exact same thing for this second panel. You may find it easier to do this if you press first before adding all your clips. If you fold it over and press everything flat first, it will be easier to sew right along the edge. So I'm going to get this sewn. I'll be back and we'll go on to the next step, which is attaching these panels together. And we're back with our binding or bias tape attached, sewn along both of the pocket panels. So our next step is to take the panel mark number 1. If you had these lines drawn by your maker, you will have a number 1 and a number 2. Number 1 will be your background pocket. It's longer. And we're going to line number 1 and number 2 up together. Line them up together. And you can see that this solid line needs to line up with this solid line. Again, the dashes with the dashes. Just get everything lined up really nice and straight. You don't want your pockets to be crooked. That looks good. I'm going to put a clip here. And a clip here. And I think I'll add a pin to the middle, right around here. Okay. Our next job is to sew the solid lines to attach these two panels together. Only the solid lines. Do not sew the dashes. So you're going to sew the solid lines on the left. This one. It includes going all the way to the top, but I think this top part is meant for when you attach it to the back, to the large piece. So we have 1, 2, 3, and these solid lines. We're going to sew from the binding, including the binding all the way down to the bottom, only on the solid lines. And I'll be back with the next step. Okay, so we're back and we've sewn our panels together for our pockets. You can see that some of the pockets are now created. And our next step is to attach it to the front panel. The front panel is the one that you've put fusible interfacing on. So we're just going to line it up at the bottom along the 23.5-inch side. And I'm going to add a clip to keep it in place so it doesn't move. So far we've sewn only on the solid lines that we saw. And I should have mentioned that I was going to backstitch at the top on the binding to make sure with use we don't pull it apart. So only the solid lines have been sewn. We'll put a couple of pins in here so it doesn't move. I'll put that where the solid lines are because I'm not going to be sewing those again. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is sew the broken lines, the dashes that we have. And we have 1, 2, and 3, and they go right up to the second layer of pocket, to the second row of pockets. There are 3 of them, and I think that I'm going to also sew this one at the top here. So this will make a smaller pocket, medium, and large. I guess that's optional. You don't have to sew this one right up to the top if you don't want to. At the same time that I'm at my machine, I'm going to change to red thread, and I'm going to attach my ribbon that I've made. I'm going to sew it right along here. I will be clipping off that extra length. I will be cutting it off. Just want to line it up kind of straight. That would help. I'll just put it behind for now. And I'll take the clip off at my sewing machine. Oops, I did a little too tight. There we go. And I think I'll just put a couple of pins in it so it doesn't move. I want to keep it straight. It would look kind of funny if it was all crooked. Okay. There we go. So I'm just going to sew this on with 2 rows in the same way that we do when we make a strap. Straighten that out. So I'm going to sew my dotted lines right up to the top. I'm also going to close this optional one, and I'm going to change to red thread, or maybe I'll leave it white, and I'll just sew 2 rows each side to keep this together and attached to the front of my tool caddy. I'll be back to show you how that turns out. So we've got our pockets attached to the front. The ends are not attached, of course, because they will be when the binding goes on. I've sewn my little decorative stripe down the front of it. That's optional, of course. I've just got some little threads that I need to trim away. I've taken off the excess ribbon that I had on the edges. I'm calling it ribbon, but it's actually fabric that I'm folded and sewed as I would if it was a ribbon or pom-poms or something to dress it up a little. So the next thing we're going to do is to assemble it with the back. So we'll just take this out of the way. We're going to put our back panel. I'm using the same fabric, but that's optional. You can use a different fabric if you want to. We're going to lay that down. 18.5 up, 23.5 across. We want to put good side down on our counter or table, on our surface, and then we want to line this up on top. Make sure it's lined up straight. Make sure nothing's bunched up underneath. That looks good. We're good there. Good. And we're all good. So now we're going to put some pins in it. We're not going to use clips along the edges because we'll be attaching our binding. So we'll use clips for that. So I'm just going to put in a few pins to keep it in place while I'm doing my binding. So this is actually quite a quick project, and it's very cute. I think it's fun. You can have it under your sewing machine or under your CRICUT machine, wherever you need it most. And it makes a really nice little gift if you have a sewist in your family or a sewist friend who you want to gift something useful. A few more pins. use a short one and get a longer one. There we go. And now we're going to attach our binding. I do my binding in the same way that I mentioned that I learned from Jenny Doan. So I'm going to start somewhere along the bottom. I guess you can start at the top if you prefer. Actually, that is the area that will be underneath your machine. So it's probably a good idea to have your start and end at the top. So I'm just going to get this lined up. I'm going to attach my binding all the way around and miter my corners. And we'll get that done. All right, so I've got my binding done, the first sew all the way around. I've done my quarters so that I can miter them, so I get a nice clean miter corner. So I'm going to press everything the way it should go now, which means it should be folded over to the back. I'm going to press everything before I clip it, but just to show you how it's going to be. I'm going to press it all, get it all nice and super flat, and then I'm going to sew the second sew of my binding all the way around, and this tool caddy will be done. So I'll be back to show you how it looks when it's all finished. And we're done, folks. I think it's really, really cute. We have all our little pockets, bindings on, ready to put under the machine or under the sewing machine or the CRICUT machine. Everything done. I need to press the back some more. So this needs to go in the washing machine to remove these draw lines from my CRICUT washable pen, fabric pen. I'll do that. And we're done. We can use it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you make some, please post pictures so we can see how they turn out. Please like my video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and thank you for watching.